The Blood Red Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
It's the Blood Red Podcast, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo. I'm Guy Clarke. Welcome along. Mane, the magic man for Liverpool, as the Reds bid farewell to their Gini. Champions League football secured, with Liverpool eventually landing a third-placed finish. Here to look back on the final day, we have our Liverpool correspondent Paul Gorst, Sean Bradbury and Matt Addison. Gentlemen, I take it you're well. And Gorsty, I'll come to you first. You were there at Anfield and they made it look easy in the end.
Yeah, they did. To be honest, I always thought that with the 10,000 fans being in there, it was going to be more of a comfortable afternoon than it has been at times, particularly this calendar year. You know, Liverpool so often in Anfield this year just looked like they've got no energy, no spark, no real invention in the final third, and more often than not, it's been a tough watch. I mean, even the games that they've won, it's been difficult. Aston Villa, and they obviously drew in the last stages against Newcastle, and then obviously the 6 defeats in a row. So it's been a long time since Anfield's been a happy place, but almost as easy as just letting the doors open and letting the fans in. That was almost transformed. Sadio Mane, I thought in particular, was someone who really, fed off the crowd. It's been a while since he's been anywhere near his best, and although he has been scoring the odd goal, hasn't looked anywhere near the kind of player that we've been used to seeing over the last 2 or 3 years at Anfield. But almost from the first whistle, him and Robertson were kind of pairing up quite nicely down the left. And there was one particular turn early on where he just let it run through his legs and then turned his man. And I thought, yeah, he looks up for it today. And so it showed that there's 2 goals. So kind of just hints at what might be possible next season when hopefully we get more fans in on a more regular basis and we get larger crowds. And 10,000 fans, Liverpool can get back to Anfield being a bit of a fortress. Obviously, it's been over 4 years since they've lost there with supporters in the ground. The 6-game losing run of this season, we'll just sweep that one under the carpet and never speak of it again, and go again next season. So, tough season for Liverpool, really difficult one full of injuries and loads of things happening off the pitch, and as Klopp mentioned a few times, to be honest, some things that we're not even particularly aware of, behind the scenes, but one that ended on a happy note. 8 wins for the last 10-game unbeaten run, and Liverpool eventually finished third. So you have to consider that a successful season, all things considered.
Yeah, Sean, in the end, they didn't even need to beat Crystal Palace, did they? With both Chelsea and Leicester losing. Actually, the points at Burnley would have been enough for Liverpool anyway to get in the top 4, but still, obviously, a good way to end it with the win on the final day, albeit, I suppose, it really Leicester's demise, but Liverpool coming on really strong, as Gorsty said, with that 10-game unbeaten run.
Yeah, just something that you never really would have seen coming, if you cast your eyes back to March or end of Feb when things were in the doldrums, but to do what they've done over the last 10 games is brilliant. It captures the Champions League for this season, and totally agree with Gorst. It sends a bit of a warning message to rivals and others about next season. All the players that there were little question marks about for whatever reason, because of form, fitness, thinking like Trent, Thiago, maybe even Addison himself, that, they've all just had an emphatic end to the season and been great. And yeah, on the game itself, I thought at the start, it was a little bit like Burnley. Liverpool seemed determined not to really trouble their keeper by bothering him with anything like shots on target or anything like that. But yeah, like you say, Guy, class told, and they could absolutely blank out the distractions and play without pressure in a manner that I don't think Leicester and Chelsea really could yesterday, because they probably were up against better opposition, but perhaps in recent seasons haven't really been as used to Liverpool as when you're in this pressure cooker situation and, you need the result. How do you carry yourself? How do you deal with it? How do you get yourself through the game? I think Gorsty's kind of mentioned all the kind of main points about how impressive individuals were yesterday, but just a word for Salah as well. I just thought he was the one I was taken with. I mean, he's been the main man this season, hasn't he? I think if you were dishing out Player of the Season awards, it would pretty much be a one-man affair. I think he's just been phenomenal. But what he did for that opening goal, helping to win the corner, when he just plucked it out of the sky with a brilliant touch and was instantly threatening and purposeful, drove forward, the vision to find Robertson, and then, obviously he won the corner that the goal came from. And then second half as well, he got his assist. There was, no real hint that he was just thinking about that golden boot. It was all about the team. It was about teeing up his mate Mane again and getting Liverpool over the line. And yeah, I just thought, what a player Liverpool have got there, absolutely at the peak of his powers. But it's just great to see the whole machine ticking again and looking so sharp ahead of next season. And I think that's the point, really. You know, this was a season that you just kind of wanted out the way, and it's felt like that perhaps even up to like the Man United game, whereas, you know, the last few matches, it's looked like Liverpool of old. They've strung this great run of form together, and I think now you really look ahead to next season with excitement and the challenge of clawing it back against Man City. It seems feasible. It seems doable now, doesn't it? There's things have been re-energized, and yeah, it's just a great time to watch and follow the Reds again.
Yeah, no, definitely. Matt, you were one of the 10,000 fans inside Anfield, and Gorsty mentioned it before, the importance of that. How much did you kind of feel that being part of it, energising the side? Because they started sloppy the first 5 minutes. There was that pass from Trent that sent Andros Townsend through on goal, but it felt as though maybe that was one of the moments through kind of the course of the season where the team did need the fans, a few groans, a few shouts just to liven them up. And by the time that first goal came, they really were playing at breakneck speed and that tempo that maybe was given to them by the fans.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there was a few nerves inside the ground, obviously, not knowing the other results. I think the other results at that particular time hadn't gone Liverpool's way, and it was kind of not really happening for them. As Sean said, they weren't really having too many shots on target at that time. But as soon as the goal went in, and even as soon as Townsend missed that, you kind of felt it around the ground that there was a few little murmurs, a few moans, but the players sort of took it upon themselves to change that. And in the end, went on, created enough chances to make it fairly comfortable for themselves. And it was just one of those moments, wasn't it? It was, a really good thing. I think that it meant something. A few weeks ago, we sort of felt like there would be fans back, and that would mean something. It would be a landmark. But the fact that it was aligned with the fact that Liverpool ended up finishing third, very much needed to get into the top four. It just made it doubly exciting. I mean, I was thinking about it last night when I got back. It kind of felt to me not like the last game of the season, but like the first game of the season. It almost felt like one of those where you've got a bit of hope. You sort of turn up for the first time in a while. You've not been to the ground for a bit. Your first time seeing the players for a long time. It felt more like the first day of the season rather than the last, in a weird sort of way. And I suppose that just ties into what Sean said about looking forward to the summer. It means now, we can hopefully have at least 10,000, if not more, on the first game of next season. You can look forward to what might happen in the summer. You can just sort of relax and take this season for what it was. A very difficult season for all of the reasons that we've gone over, but the fact that it's been such a tough season, but they've still managed to finish third, I just think, sums up exactly how good this Liverpool team can be and exactly why we are all rightly so excited about what could happen in sort of next season and the first few months, because I think we've seen a glimpse of it, but it was kind of a reminder of what Liverpool can be without being at their absolute best. But we, of course, know that they've got Van Dijk and Gomez and all the rest of those players to come back.
Yeah, definitely. Gorst, it seemed telling to me that Sadio Mane got both of the goals. He's been sort of bereft of confidence. He's tried to seek help as to why his form's fallen off a cliff. But he was the guy who scored the last time fans were inside Anfield in the 1-1 draw with West Brom. Fans are back. He gets another brace and sends Liverpool into third place. Any coincidence for you that actually he might be one of these players who feeds off the fans?
No, I don't think so. But I'm not really sure why, because he's somebody they don't always sing about them, do they, the fans? We heard yesterday the Salah song, the Firmino song, Wijnaldum. There was even a debut song for Thiago, but I don't remember Sadio Mane getting too much of a mention. But I think he is just someone who just needs that buzz of a live crowd, because almost from the first whistle yesterday, he just looked so much sharper and brighter than he has looked in a long time. And it was interesting, wasn't it? You mentioned earlier that he said he's basically searched out some help to try and find out what's going wrong. And I think that kind of delves into the psyche a little bit of elite athletes and just how much of a mental thing it can be at certain times, because he hasn't necessarily been doing anything wrong or different. It's just one of those things where it's just not quite firing for him, and just maybe them small margins aren't going his way. But yesterday he was back to something approaching his best, and he was in the right spot at the right time at the back post, wasn't he, to bundle home the first. And then the second one reminded me a little bit of one of the goals he scored against City, actually, and I think it was the 4-3 win a couple of years ago. Just lined her up, had all the time in the world on that left foot, and took a little bit of a nick and went in. And it was a strong finish in the end to the season for him. I think He scored 4 in his last 4 or 5. So he's, for all the questions of his performances, he has been, putting them in the net. So he's another one, I think, if he has a proper rest this pre-season and then he has a good pre-season, him, probably put Thiago in that same bracket and probably 3 or 4 others. If they can all get a good rest, a good pre-season, then Liverpool can really hit the ground running. As Matt says, hopefully the fans will be allowed in. There's been no change on the June 21st kind of lifting of everything from the Prime Minister. So as things stand, you have to take that as face value. The Liverpool will have a full Anfield in August. So plenty of things to be positive about at the end of what was a very difficult and testing season.
Yeah, definitely. And Sean, Liverpool found their consistency by the end. 10 games, unbeaten, 5 wins in a row to end it. 8 wins from those final 10 games. If you sort of take out that 14-game stretch just before it, where Liverpool only got 3 wins, they'd started the season so well. And I'm just thinking, with fans coming back in, it is about refinding that consistency, because this year it was the first time since 2016 when Leicester won the title that actually a team's not needed at least 90 points to win the league title. So if Liverpool can find that consistency and get back to those levels, no reason why they can't be challenging City next season.
Oh, absolutely not. And I think that's the mindset Liverpool have to go into this summer with. I mean, you look back at this season, and whether you're a player or a fan, I think so much of it was so utterly abject, wasn't it? And I don't mean that just in a purely Liverpool sense, but playing without fans and the stale nature of all that entails. VAR obviously causing issues again, and I think pretty much every club could point to a list of times that's done them out of something where the fans would think it went totally the wrong way. I think you could say the whole Super League fiasco and the sour taste that left as well. But yeah, Liverpool have just got to focus on the fact that despite everything that happened, they managed to almost fashion a bit of a fairy tale out of the end of the season. As you say, Guy, that winning run, certainly the unbeaten run, 8 wins in the last 10, somehow finishing 3rd, which I still kind of can't believe every time I look at the table that they're actually that high up there. But, every factor you look at, the decimation of injuries in the squad, that if you put a positive on that, it paved the way for Curtis Jones to become a bona fide Liverpool first team player. You saw the likes of Phillips, Kabak, Williams come in and have to play their part and all do it pretty admirably, to a man. And I think just, in a general sense, it's a campaign that you do want to forget about. But as Liverpool so often do, they force you to not forget about certain things. There's so many memorable moments that I think reference points Klopp could almost use now. Obviously, Alisson's goal's an obvious one, but even before that, and even in some of the times where it wasn't perhaps going so well and Liverpool backs are still against the wall, you think that Salah goal against West Ham. I saw that flash up on social media again earlier today, or I think it was in Match of the Day. It was one of their goal of the season contenders, and kind of forgotten about that. It was so good. Trent against Villa as well. There's so many great moments. And then looking at the Palace game as well, in a season that's kind of been dulled and deadened by lack of intensity and emotion, you get this real hit of the send-off for Wijnaldum, which I'm sure we'll come on to. So yeah, I just think this is what Liverpool do, isn't it? You can never write them off, and they never really let you down in the grand scheme of things. I think as much as this might have seemed a very poor season to follow Liverpool from a fan perspective and a very difficult one for the players and staff, you got a reminder there, I suppose, against Palace, didn't you? It was 10 years ago when we had 6 months of Roy Hodgson and probably one of the lowest ebbs of being a Liverpool fan or follower in recent years. But look how things have been turned around since, But I think, yeah, now everything just points towards Liverpool getting a flying start to next season. If even half the players can carry on the form that they're in at this moment now, and with a couple of additions perhaps over the summer as well, a bit of fresh blood, Thiago and Jota, who've done very well, bedded in even more, getting to know their surroundings and their players and the city and everything just that little bit better now things are opening up. Yeah, I just think somehow at the end of what's been a very sorry season, Liverpool just in a great place.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I suppose carrying on that fairy tale feel that Sean mentioned there, Matt, is the defensive partnership that ended the season. 3 clean sheets in the last 5 games for Reece Williams and Nat Phillips at the heart of defence. I have to say that on our post-game podcast, Alex Watt said that Nat Phillips should be getting a brand association with bandages and headbands because of the amount that he goes through. Cut again, as I say, I have to give credit to Alex Watt for coming up with that one. But again, the two of them up to the task against Palace.
Yeah, the two of them were fantastic, weren't they? I mean, just in terms of the running, to be able to put together, a run of form pretty much out of the blue, really, for both of them. I mean, it's easy to forget how little both of them played in the first half of this season, even. I mean, it sort of feels now like they've been together for a little while, but it's not that many matches that they've played. Phillips has played, obviously, slightly more with various partners, but it's just kind of one of those things that I think we'll look back at this season and just wonder how on earth it happened, how on earth that partnership managed to get Liverpool over the line in terms of that form. And they deserve just so much credit for it. I mean, neither of them may be at Liverpool next season. We don't know what will happen with them during the summer, but you can't take away what they've done. It's just been an absolutely incredible achievement. I think Jurgen Klopp's mentioned it plenty of times. Whatever they go on to do in their career, whether that's at Liverpool or elsewhere, they'll always have this season and what they did. And they're as big a part of it as any other part of this Liverpool team in terms of what they've achieved. But I think it just shows, doesn't it, the fact that Liverpool have had so much disruption at the heart of the defence, but they've still come out of this season in the position they're in. Once you add in the better quality, once you put in, even if you just put in Van Dijk and forgot about all of the other injured players, I mean, instantly that would have a huge improvement. So yeah, it's been one of those seasons. We're sort of glad that it's over, but at the same time, you shouldn't forget about the huge storylines such as those. And just in terms of that, in terms of adding in that quality, I mean, Christian Walsh tweeted yesterday, and he'd sort of done the maths to say that the first 14 games and the final 10 games, Liverpool have been going at a rate which would get you 90 points a season. It's only really the 10 in the middle of that they have to improve. And once you add in Jordan Henderson, Van Dijk, Gomez, Matip, all of these other players, that 10-game spell wouldn't have been the same with those players in. And that just makes you so excited for what can happen next season. If Liverpool have been this good with all of these problems, how good are they going to be next season when hopefully you'll get a fraction of those injuries?
Yeah, no, apologies, my dog's barking. The postman's just arrived. So, it's that time of the day. In terms of moments of the season, Gorsty, of course, we know Alisson Becker's header is the moment, but it sort of feels so Liverpool that in a sterile and soulless season like this, behind closed doors, that there are so many narratives and storylines, as Matt said, of each of these different players having their moment to kind of shine.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you look at Nat Phillips now, that's his 20th Liverpool appearance yesterday. So the power's in his hands now. I think if he wants to stick around at Liverpool, he could easily be, fourth or fifth choice next season, and you'd have absolutely no qualms with him going into a League Cup game or an FA Cup game or even the odd league game, with a bit of rotation. He's been fantastic. Reece Williams is a few years younger. He's only just turned 20, so he's got plenty of time on his side, and I think a loan move might beckon for him somewhere. But Klopp said a couple of weeks back that both of them were going to have proper careers off the back of this season, and you'd have to agree with that, wouldn't you? I think if Phillips feels that he could be playing regularly somewhere else in the top flight, I think he will definitely have suitors knocking on Liverpool's door. 20 appearances for a club like Liverpool is probably enough of a sample size for someone a little bit further down the league to look at it and think, yeah, this lad could certainly do a job for us. And you look at him at Turf Moor on Wednesday night. He's tailor-made for Burnley, isn't he? He's that type of defender who heads everything, gets his tackles in, gets his blocks in, nothing too elaborate on the ball, keeps it simple, and is just absolutely loves defending. So fair play to him. He's been one of the few kind of outstanding stories of this season. And Williams as well, who basically made hay because Phillips was cup tied in the Champions League. He was a big part of Liverpool getting through that group stage, wasn't he? And played a big part in the win against Tottenham in December, and he's come in for the last few games and been excellent. So both of those players will hold their heads high this morning and know that they will have a career, a good career in football, wherever that may be. Whether they want to stick around at Liverpool and learn a little bit more from the likes of Van Dijk and Gomez and Matip, it's up to them. But certainly, power is now in Phillips' hands, definitely. And I think the most interesting thing is when you think that Kabak joined at the very end of January and didn't start straight away. Yeah, him and Phillips' combined partnership of 8 games is the most of any Liverpool centre-back partnership this season. And when you consider that there's been 20 different partnerships, that pretty much tells you where the problems have been for Liverpool this season. So you can say that they've had issues converting chances and so on and so forth, but I think it all just has a knock-on effect from that destabilising lack of defensive options. So that's not going to happen next season, is it? Liverpool are going to be in the hunt for another centre-back, and Phillips, if he wants to stay on, will be there as well. So Liverpool going from feast to famine next season. Once everyone gets fit, they're going to have a real strong defensive department to choose from again.
Yeah, I remember you saying even back in the summer that Liverpool needed a Clavan type signing, but maybe he was there all along in Nat Phillips, maybe somewhat limited in some aspects of his game in Liverpool, of course, in a very different place to when Clavan was at the club. But as you say, if he does want to stick around, I'm sure Jurgen Klopp would be more than willing to keep him. One player who doesn't look like he's going to be sticking around, Sean, Gini Wijnaldum, given a standing ovation as he left with 12 minutes to go and then came back on the pitch afterwards for a guard of honour from all of those involved at Liverpool staff and players. I know you're a huge fan of Gini Wijnaldum. Was there a tear in the eye from you yesterday seeing that all play out? It was emotional stuff, wasn't it?
Absolutely. I think I've a bit at the ground. I might have shed one or two, but no, I was working yesterday, so professional head on, just tapping away, and all that type of thing. But it was strange, really. I suppose I was thinking about this last night. There's been a few players who have left Liverpool in recent seasons, and been sad to see them go for whatever reason. But they've been good servants, I'd say, rather than legends of the modern era. I'd say like Lallana, probably Lovren, Sturridge, maybe even Mignolet. You can say these are good guys who've been around the squad. Who've had their moments. Certainly in terms of Sturridge's case, and possibly Lallana and Lovren too. Some very memorable moments and been a part of the rich recent history of Liverpool. But Wijnaldum, I think he's one of the first major Klopp signings, and he's the first major Klopp signing to depart, as it seems it is now going to happen. But yeah, I think as you said, Guy, it was sad, but it was also heartwarming to see what happened for him after the final whistle, that guard of honour, the presentation of a nice sort of mock-up of the Champions Wall that was given to him in a little frame. And I just think he's going to be missed. I can totally understand how it's arrived at this point, but even in the game against Palace, you could see the very best of what Wijnaldum does. And I do think it raises the question of how much it's going to be missed. He was constantly filling gaps. He was switching roles. He was quietly facilitating everything that happens around him, as we've always seen him do. But I saw a tweet with all his stats, and once again, it was just so rounded. That's what you so often get from him. His passing was accurate. He dribbled well. He won duels. He was progressive at times. That Salah moment that I was talking about before, when he controlled the ball in the build-up to the first goal. I think it was from a long pass from Wijnaldum. That he can just do a bit of everything, can't he? And my thing about him leaving is availability. I just think is now one of the absolute most valuable commodities in football. And I saw a tweet, I think it was from the Tactical Times account yesterday or the day before, that was saying Wijnaldum's averaged 47 games a season while he's been at Liverpool, obviously in all competitions. And this season he's made 50. So I'd like to see Michael Edwards' algorithms that say this is a guy who we shouldn't be paying, and this is a guy who's potentially going to drop off, because he's still playing, isn't he? And that's the one concern, I think, when you look at Liverpool's midfield. I hope that there is a squad succession plan or a transfer plan in place, because there's a lot of excellent players, but there are quite a number of players for whom minutes is sometimes a bit of an issue. You think of Keita, Milner and Henderson, two superb players, but they're not getting any younger. Fabinho obviously sometimes is in and out. Jones, as we've already mentioned on this podcast, fantastic player, had a great season. The pathway's there for him now, and that's really good. But yeah, the Wijnaldum-shaped hole in the squad, if that is how it turns out, between now and the 1st of July, which everything points to, is going to be a very big one to fill. And just as a final word on my thoughts on him, I just think fair play to him this season, and last as well, really. While all this speculation about what he'll do and what will happen with his contract has been buzzing around, and there must be talk about that in the dressing room, mustn't there? Every other player and all his mates, Van Dijk, you saw that big hug those two shared when he was taken off towards the end of the Palace game. He must have to deal with all this, and you never really would have seen that it was affecting him, in terms of how he's performed on the pitch. So yeah, I hope wherever he goes next, he thrives, and I certainly hope Liverpool don't draw them in Europe, whoever it might be.
How right was it, Matt, that there was that crowd there inside Anfield to be able to say, first of all, thank you for the service, the 5 years of service he's given Liverpool, and of course, be able to share that back to him before he did, maybe, and it is still a maybe, leave the pitch as a Liverpool player for the last time?
Yeah, I think it's more than a maybe in terms of the obviously the scenes that we saw and all of that. The statement seemed to suggest that he would quite like to stay, but it's Liverpool that would quite like to move him on, which again I think is understandable. It's ruthless, but it's one of those. He turns 31 later this year, and sort of you've got to think about being ruthless, taking the next step, evolving, all of those sorts of things. I mean, it can be a masterstroke to move him on. If he goes somewhere else, maybe declines and Liverpool can get somebody else in. But there's a lot of ifs there. There's a lot of things that have to take place before we can sort of talk about those sorts of things. But yeah, in terms of the moment and in terms of, there being fans there, it is one of those things that you would have been absolutely gutted for him. I'm sure he would have been gutted if he'd have just moved on and there hadn't been anybody there to sort of wave him off. I'm sure Liverpool would have done something in terms of the training ground and stuff like that. But I think, especially after a long season like this, for him to have been so consistent, to have played in loads of different positions for Liverpool, to have slotted in wherever they've needed him to do all of the things, he's been a huge part of this season. And as much as anything else, he deserved, the standing ovation. He deserved all of the applause, because time will tell whether it's the right time to sort of move him on. Whether it is or it isn't, we don't know yet, but there's no doubt about it. He's been a huge part of this Liverpool squad for the past 5 years. And like with other players, it would have just been a massive shame, really, for him to just sort of move on quietly without any sort of applause, without any sort of recognition from the supporters, because there is a real love for him. I think, as Sean said, he's the first one probably of those who are an absolutely integral part of this Liverpool team to move on. It's the first time we've kind of seen that sort of thing, and I think Liverpool fans yesterday absolutely recognise that. I think Gini Wijnaldum said something along the lines of he'll always be a Liverpool fan, and there is that clear connection between the fans and the players. So yeah, I was delighted to sort of see that happened in the way it did. I'm sure, as I say, if there hadn't have been any fans there would still have been some sort of recognition, but it's just that added value, I think, that somebody like him absolutely is deserved.
Is it too simple of me, Paul, looking at the statement from Jorginho Wijnaldum saying that he would have loved to have stayed had it been possible, and Jurgen Klopp, his programme notes speaking about how this Liverpool side was built on Gini Wijnaldum's lungs and what he's brought to the team, and that he loves him as a human being? Am I too simplistic in thinking player loves football club, manager loves player? Can't something be done?
Well, yeah, I know it does seem a strange one, doesn't it? We've written a few times now for a number of months that Wijnaldum is desperate to stay, and he's confirmed it himself, hasn't he, yesterday with his comments, which I thought were really interesting. And it's just a massive shame, when you think of how important he's been for Liverpool, not only for the last 5 years, but also this season. He's played 51 times this season, which is remarkable, really, when you think he's going into the final few weeks of the season. He's leading the team out. He's captaining the side. And he's not being given the armband because he's coming towards the end. He is one of the four leaders in this squad, isn't he, alongside Milner, Henderson and Van Dijk. So, yeah, it just seems a massive shame. And he's going to be massively in demand this summer at a time when clubs are still kind of adjusting to the financial impact of the pandemic, and they're trying to work out what they can do and what they can't do. Having a 30-year-old midfielder, peak of his career, a Champions League regular, Champions League and Premier League winning midfielder who doesn't miss any games, he's going to have his pick, isn't he? He could quite easily pitch up at Chelsea or even Manchester City, and Liverpool would only have themselves to blame. I think basically what the issue is he's looked at his importance and his value to the team, and he might have been asking for parity with some of the big earners in this Liverpool squad, and perhaps how those decisions are made. The club have looked at it and thought that we can't really justify X amount of money for someone who's 30 plus. I mean, I'm just kind of guessing on that one. We don't know the true ins and outs of it, but what we do know is he was desperate to stay, and he confirmed as much yesterday. So just seems a real shame that he's going to ride off into the sunset and be a valuable asset for a rival next season.
Yeah, he's a man who's obviously delivered moments for Liverpool as well as consistency. Sean, you think of the semi-finals in Rome against Barcelona at Anfield as well, the important goals he scored in league games for Liverpool as well. But he rarely has been a man to get 9s and 10s in ratings at the end of games, but he's always there for a 7 out of 10, isn't he? He's one of the dependable players, as you said before, all about consistency, something that Liverpool through this course of the season have really relied on him for.
Oh, yeah, massively. I think, if anything was going to sum him up, I think it's that idea that if no one else is going to do it, go on, then I'll do it, because I always think when you just compare what he does for Liverpool to what he does for his country, it's selfless, it's about facilitation. It allows every other player in virtually every other position, certainly anyone who goes forward, to just go and do their thing, and he fills in and he covers gaps. But as you say, Guy, beyond that, he's still had those moments, hasn't he? Barca and the other ones you've said, Middlesbrough, get Liverpool back into the Champions League, where he's stepped up and been the main man. He's always capable of that. It always kind of bubbles under the surface a little bit. And I think that's part of it. Like if you do, see what he does on a game-to-game basis and appreciate that, that's one thing. But there is also those huge moments where you can point to and say, look at that. He's not only is he a Liverpool legend for what he does or what he's done week on week, but he has those huge memorable moments and a highlight reel that virtually any Liverpool.
Did you know teams only spend 40% of their time on work that counts? Save your team from hours of boring busy work and hit your goals faster with Asana. Visit asana.com to try for free. That's ASANA.
Liverpool player I think would be proud of. So yeah, I'm just not sure how I'm going to feel if he does come up against Liverpool, but perhaps the plan all along was to just play him in virtually every game this season and then hand them over in pieces to whoever it is that's going to take them on. But yeah, we'll see. Be some reception if he does ever turn up back at Anfield, that's for sure.
Yeah, I suppose it's about trusting what Liverpool do in the transfer market as well, Matt, isn't it? Because in many ways, he's kind of been a defining player for the FSG and the Michael Edwards transfer era, coming in, underwhelming fans on the face of it, but then completely over exceeding expectation. And think of the likes of him and Mane, picked up from Southampton, mid-table Premier League side, Salah, who hadn't quite cut it in the Premier League beforehand. And these guys have all been superstars. And as we said before, the first one to depart.
I think he encompasses everything that you want from a sort of Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool player, to be honest. He's, as you say, one of those who's sort of he came in as a kind of winger or number 10. That's where he played for Newcastle. Hasn't really done that at all for Liverpool. Everyone's sort of got used to seeing him now as a number 8 or a number 6. He's played centre-back, he's played up front, he's played all over the place for Liverpool. And that's kind of what Jurgen Klopp loves in a player, isn't it? He doesn't want somebody who just does one thing. He wants each player to be able to play 2, 3, in Wijnaldum's case, 4, 5, 6 different positions. And that's going to be so difficult to sort of replace, to be honest, in terms of a transfer fee and that sort of thing. To get a younger version of Gini Wijnaldum is not going to come cheap for Liverpool this summer. So I think it's going to be a really interesting one to see how they replace him. But I'm really fascinated to see where he ends up as well. I know, he's been linked with Bayern Munich. His agents come out and sort of encourage them to come to the table, but that kind of suggests that he doesn't really have any idea where he's going to be at this moment in time. There's nothing sort of tied up or anything like that at this moment. And I think that kind of ties into what he's done for Liverpool as well. It's not just that he's been so good and he's been so sort of consistent and in the team every week in slightly different roles. It's kind of gone under the radar, I think, with maybe fans of other clubs who don't see what he does. They don't see what he brings to the table. He doesn't score 15 goals a season, but what he does is an equally important role. And I think if maybe some of the other clubs have seen how good he's been for Liverpool at times at doing the sort of unseen bits of the game, I think maybe there'd be a little bit more interest. I know sort of last summer there was kind of some murmurs that Barcelona and Ronald Koeman wanted him, and maybe Barcelona fans weren't particularly impressed with that. They didn't really get what he was about. But I think for me, Gini Wijnaldum at his peak could sort of go into any team in Europe and improve them. And there's no doubt about it, it'll be a huge loss for Liverpool.
Yeah, and Jurgen Klopp even playing the role of agent in the press conference after the game, touting him around and saying, anybody wants a reference, call me and I'll be glad to give you one. But I suppose, Gorst, it begs the question, how do Liverpool replace him?
big question, isn't it? There was a school of thought that suggested that Liverpool already replaced them last season with Thiago Alcantara's arrival. There was a train of thought to say that kind of suggested that, well, we think Wijnaldum might be leaving, so we need another high quality central midfielder in there. And in the end, Wijnaldum stayed and Thiago joined, and Liverpool had 8 central midfielders alongside Milner, Henderson, Keita, Fabinho, Jones. Anyone I've missed out there?
Ox, did you mention him?
Oxlade-Chamberlain, yeah. So Liverpool have got plenty of options, haven't they? 8 midfielders for a 3-man engine room. So that was a train of thought, as I say. But I think Liverpool got that deal done irrespective of Wijnaldum's situation. I think they just thought that Thiago, player of his quality, was up for grabs for a relatively low fee, and his contract was up, and Liverpool took advantage of that. So I don't think those two crossed over in the way that some people might have thought. But if Liverpool do want to replace him, you're talking upwards of 30 million at least, aren't you, for someone to come in and do exactly what Wijnaldum does. And it's a difficult job. As Matt says, he's almost got the perfect skill set to thrive in Klopp's midfield. And you need to be available. You need to be as fit as anyone in the division, and you need to get about the pitch and work hard. And you're not going to be, one of the regularly sung heroes of the team. So it's a tough, big boots to fill, and it's going to cost Liverpool at a time when they're not particularly awash with money. I mean, we know they've qualified for the Champions League, and that's going to be a massive boost to the coffers this summer, and they've just got the Redbird capital investment with FSG. But Liverpool are never really a team who go and spend 200 million plus on rebuilding the squad, are they? So they've given themselves extra work to do there by not kind of getting Wijnaldum's situation ticked off, earlier down the line. So it's just another headache for the recruitment team to look at this summer, and there are quite a few of those now, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. 17 points off the pace then in the end, Sean, in terms of Manchester City winning the league title. We know there's big players coming back from injury. How quickly they'll get back to top form, we'll have to wait and see. But how much work do you think there is then that needs doing in this transfer window this summer?
Difficult question, that, because I think in almost every area of the team there's work to do. But I think there's variables then and big debates to be had in the kind of, backroom areas of Kirby and, between Klopp and Michael Edwards and the staff as to how much work genuinely does need to be done. Because, let's take the centre-back situation for the start. I know you guys have spoken about Phillips and Williams before, but, there was that enduring image at the end of the game last night. I think we tweeted it out from the Echo where Phillips and Williams have got their arms around each other, covered in, blood, sweat and tears, like something from Band of Brothers. And, it would be a real shame for neither of them to be at Liverpool next season. And I think that's a distinct possibility. Williams leaving on loan. And as Gorst said before, if they do decide Phillips has reached the ceiling and, even as a 4th, 5th, maybe 6th choice centre-back, he wants to go and play games elsewhere, then that's totally understandable and fair enough. But I just think, he's done so well over the past 10 games or so, and even before that in moments, that they've got to have a little look at that and say, well, when Van Dijk and the others come back, what would he be like alongside them? I think it's a genuine question now. He's shown that he's good enough, I think, in both boxes as just an aerial threat and as someone who can head the ball away and get it clear. The question then becomes, what's he like in between? Can he pass well enough? Can he bring the ball out of defence well enough to be a Liverpool defender in a higher line, squeezing oppositions next to Van Dijk, and with all that brings in terms of benefits, but also you're just going to get targeted purely, aren't you? Because no one wants to have a go of Virgil next to you. So the defence is an issue, but potentially not a massive one. If all the other defenders come back fit and firing and, close to 100% of the player that they were when they all got injured, then suddenly it doesn't become that big of a deal. Midfield, you guys have covered it. Is there someone like Basuma, someone who is available all the time and has those minutes, who could come in and kind of be in the squad and be a bit of a presence that Wijnaldum offered? And then I think in the forward line as well, clearly next season we'll see hopefully even more of Jota, and it's no longer just 3, is it? It's 4 very, very dangerous and highly talented players up front. But I think you're probably looking at Shaqiri and Origi and maybe seeing how much they could get for both of those players and potentially replacing them with one other player who is versatile and might get a bit more of a look in than those two guys have done this season. So I think it's fine tuning, but it's fine tuning across quite a span of the squad, if that makes sense.
But we dedicated so much time talking about Gini Wijnaldum as well, Matt, that 2 years out from 2023, there's a number of big players as well whose contracts need sorting. So it's not just about recruitment, it's about retaining players as well.
Yeah, it's as much about new contracts, I think, for me this summer in terms of the priorities. It's going to be a case of, can they tie down Salah, Firmino, Mane, all of these players? They have to make a decision one way or the other. You either maybe move them on and accept that they go down the same path as Wijnaldum and maybe leave for free, or you sort of give them improved terms, give them a longer contract, give them what they want, which I think Mohamed Salah has been angling for at times this season, certainly. So it's a big summer in terms of that. Obviously, the Champions League money will help them in terms of being able to do that. It's a little bit less of a financial gamble to give these players new contracts if you've got another season of Champions League money guaranteed, for example. So I think there's a lot of big decisions to be made. I think in terms of new signings, I think you have to replace Wijnaldum. Bissouma is one that keeps coming up as a potential option. You wonder whether that could be done, but again, it's not going to be cheap. They're going to want 30, 40 million. We saw that with Ben White last summer. They refused, 3 or 4 offers for him and ended up keeping him in the end. And you wonder whether Bissouma might be a similar sort of player in terms of being difficult to get out of Brighton. So I think there's work to be done in that position in terms of replacing Wijnaldum. Again, you need another forward and you probably need a centre-back as well. So it's not going to be wholesale changes, but I think there's certainly 3 signings, possibly 4, depending on what happens with Phillips and Williams. You might need 2 centre-backs rather than 1. Then Ozan Kabak sort of comes into the equation and you sort of wonder whether you could sort of sign him and that would fill one. But yeah, there's not going to be loads of signings. There's not going to be loads of changes, but I think it's certainly going to be a big summer in terms of making decisions, not just for next season, but for the next 2 or 3 seasons as well.
Yeah, I feel like we've just opened a can of worms. But final say, Gorst, I'll come to you just because the European Championship starts 2 weeks on Friday. I'm sure Jurgen Klopp will want to be getting, or Michael Edwards even will want to be getting some feelers out there in the transfer window. You've been looking forward to the end of the season, but the fun and games might only just be starting.
From a Liverpool recruitment point of view,
yeah.
Probably never really stops, does it? We know Liverpool work really hard, diligently behind the scenes to establish relationships with agents and agencies, and we saw that borne out just from the Simicast signing and the Jota signings. If you look at the kind of in-depth pieces we've done on those two, and they sign, Liverpool do really work hard to establish good working relationships and hope that somewhere down the line that can come in handy. I mean, we know Liverpool have got, for example, a good relationship with Red Bull Salzburg, and it's just, I think things like this kind of go. I mean, they definitely go unseen, but I think a lot of football fans never really think about it. I think sometimes people think it's as simple as you want player A, so you ring up their club and ask how much they want for them. It doesn't always work like that, does it? So Liverpool are going to be busy as ever behind the scenes. We know for certain that they're going to be chasing a centre-back, and we can almost state categorically that there will be a centre-back arriving this summer. Canate seems to be the front runner at this stage. They're going to be in the market for a forward, and I think they're going to be 1 or 2 leaving as well. I'd almost wager that Shaqiri and Origi have played their final games for Liverpool now. They can get decent offers for those 2. I think those 2 might be out the door, and anything that comes in has to be kind of replenished into the budget, because we know that Liverpool aren't going to be working with hundreds of millions of pounds this summer. The pandemic has cost them 120 million plus, and this is a club who aren't kind of bankrolled by any kind of sugar daddy. So it's going to be interesting. Liverpool kind of kept the powder dry the last couple of seasons. I think the last kind of significant addition was obviously they brought in Minamino, didn't they, in January of last season, and then Thiago and Jota in the summer. But it still feels like this is largely the same squad that they've had for 3 or 4 years now. So maybe a little bit of evolution rather than revolution is needed, and it's as ever, it's going to be fascinating to see what they do. But so we'll be across it all as and when it's happening.
Yeah, we will, of course, be across the Liverpool Echo website and the Blood Red channels, whether that be our dedicated YouTube channel or podcast feeds, wherever it is you do join us. You just wonder how crucial securing Champions League football could well be in getting some of that business done early in the summer. But from Sean Bradbury, Paul Gorst, Matt Addison and myself, Guy Clarke, thanks for your time and your company here on Blood Red. It's bye for now.